Well, hello there and welcome to Boonatix, the community for SimRacing beginners and enthusiasts alike. I've been asked a lot since I got the CSL DD how it feels like, what my experiences are, and most importantly, what settings do I use in Assetto Corsa Competizione. I decided it's time for another video to showcase you not the best, ultimate, most amazing settings that will make you the best sim racer in the world, but I will show you how I set it up, why I set it up, and yeah, just explain a little bit what feels right to me and show it to you so that you can give it a try. The thing with force feedback, wheelbases, and all the different settings is there is basically no perfect setting. Everybody is different. Everybody feels the things from the wheelbase differently and has different preferences. And also you have to know that every game is different. So the force feedback technology, the software, the way the game is programmed, and so on. Although there are similarities, but one most important thing is actually that force feedback is not real. The things that we feel in sim racing games or that we want to feel in sim racing games have not really that much to do with real race cars. So I think this is one important aspect that I want to talk about in a different video that I'm currently producing. So in this one, I just want to focus on the CSL DD settings for Assetto Corsa Competizione and give you a few different options to try out. But most importantly, what type of sim racer are you? Do you want to feel more what the car is doing? Do you want more immersion? Are you looking for smooth detail? So what is your goal? And for me, the ultimate challenge was always I want to not go for the ultimate immersion, but I need and I want to kind of like feel the most detail of what the car is doing to enable me and help me in my efforts to, become faster, more consistent, be a bit more competitive, but most importantly, just be as clean and as smooth as possible with my race car on the track. And there are actually different settings for that, because you either prefer a more stronger, harder, more maybe challenging force feedback, or you'd prefer it to be a bit easier, a bit smoother, so you can feel more the different nuances, the details in it. So the way I approached it is, in the beginning, I looked up the recommended Fanatec settings and I just went from there. And I also looked up other streamers, what they were suggesting. And it was very, very interesting to see so many different settings and explanations. And to be honest, most of them didn't really feel right to me. And that's really important because there is no perfect solution. There is no perfect force feedback setting that is the best solution for everyone. If you ever see a thumbnail that tells you that this is the best setting, just don't take it seriously. It's the usual clickbait. By the way, what did my thumbnail actually say? So as I said in the beginning, everybody is different. Everybody has different priorities in what he or she needs and wants to feel in the steering wheel. So after I set up the first recommended settings from Fanatec and looked what like other content creators are doing, I quickly nailed it down to like a first setting that is a bit more on the stronger side of the CSL DD, so making use of the boost kit, giving me a bit more stronger forces, because I was used to that from the CSL DD wheelbase, and I kinda just like thought, or at least appreciated, the stronger feeling. And that sometimes meant that I had to fight the car, the bumps in the track, and was like really getting so much strong feedback that I started to tune it down a little bit. But let's take a look at one of the two settings that I used, or still use so far for ACCs, is this first version that is a bit stronger. And the big difference, or the big focus point here, is it uses the peak mode. And here we are right next to Assetto Corsa Competizione and the in-game settings that I'm using for this first set that I call the peak mode tuning setting. And you can see in the background the game setting that we have is the gain to 70%. We are using the 8 Nm boost kit, of course, and dynamic dampening set to 80%, and the rest is actually as usual. Steering angle is the same to 1080. So in the tuning menu of Fanatec, we are using 100% of the overall force feedback strength. and the scaling here is peak. And what this means is actually the feedback that you get is more direct, more strong, more maybe pronounced. I'm not sure, but we will compare it then with the second mode that I'm using. So natural dampener is here set to 25%, natural friction and inertia is off, interpolation filter is on 2, the force effect intensity is on 70, and the rest, force effect strength, spring effect strength, damper effect strength is on 100%. I'm using the McLaren GT3 V2 wheel with the constant mode. So one of the things I learned here is actually the force effect intensity was on 90 in the beginning, and I just felt that like it was a bit too harsh, giving me way too hard effects on the steering wheel, and I toned it down to 80 and now even on 70. And you will recognize that maybe sometimes or in some cars, depending if you go GT4 or GT3, that this maybe requires a different setting or a different approach. So feel free to experiment with the force effect intensity here. Now on to the other version that I'm currently using and that I actually discovered and was suggested to me from Tristan from R&D Racing Department. Thank you so much for basically forcing me to use that, because it's really interesting. He was experiencing something that me and many others were experiencing in the Force DD, being often very direct and giving you jolts and pushes into the steering wheel that could feel weird and out of place. And so he built this up and suggested me to use the linear setting. So the way what we change is actually in the game we go on 100% dynamic dampening and keep the gain at a 70%. And then in the tuning menu we switch to linear mode, and what that does is actually it smoothens out the peak forces. And as you can see in the explanation, it's a much linear and much better behavior between like peak forces into the wheel and ongoing force feedback forces. And then the other settings we use are 30% natural dampener, 5% natural friction, 13% natural inertia, 2 force feedback interpolation filter, 80 on the force effect intensity, and then again 100% for force effect strength, spring effect strength, dampen effect strength, constant mode, and the rest is the same. So we tweaked a bit with the settings here, because what linear does is it makes everything smoother and lighter. So sometimes it was feeling a bit too light, so we had to adapt there with the friction and the inertia and the interpolation filter. But the CSL DD is overall already giving you a really good, much more pronounced and smoother feedback because it is a direct drive wheel. But what the linear setting does is it just enhances everything so much more in not regarding strength, but detail. It's while you can feel a lot of good stuff with the CSL DD and have a much easier time on catching a car, catching a drift, preventing it from losing the rear and stuff like that, the linear setting makes it even that much better. And this is actually the setting I prefer right now while driving in GT4 and GT3 cars, because you feel everything even more pronounced. The amount of detail that the CSL DD kind of filters out that you don't really need. For example, getting really strong jolts into the steering wheel when you're driving around bumps or curbs, or like getting off track and being rattled out of your chair, is still there, but it's not over pronounced. And this is really interesting, and that's why I said like I want to show you 2 different settings, because there are people who want to feel more because they think it's more immersive or they just enjoy it that much more, and then have a second setup for you that is a bit smoother, a bit more detailed, a bit more pronounced, and maybe especially for beginners, if you just got the CSL DD and you're struggling in ACC to feel what the car is doing, try the second linear setting. Don't be scared. The steering wheel and the force feedback overall will feel lighter. And that's actually, I would have to say, normal in modern GT3 and GT4 racing cars, that you're not fighting against the steering wheel. It feels light. It doesn't give you that much detail in real life like it gives you in the force feedback, because of course this is our only connection to the game and to the car. But what that does is that you're not constantly fighting the forces. That is actually one good point when you're doing many endurance races or are racing several races across the day, to not get exhausted. But again, it helps you to understand easier what a car is doing and the amount of feedback you get. Because what people tend to do is just they overtune their feedback because they think they need all the strong forces, they need to be shaken out of their chair because that's real and that's the pure immersion. But what that does is actually it just diminishes the feedback that you get and just makes it so much harder to, you know, improve and enjoy the game and be consistent enough. So these were my two setups for Assetto Corsa Competizione. I will show you the race room settings because there's a little bit more to show and to explain in a separate video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope those settings were helpful for you. Please let me know in the comments which one you prefer or if you have any suggestions to tweak them even more. Thank you so much for watching. This is Boonatix, the community for sim racing beginners and enthusiasts. And don't forget, press the like button to help me grow the channel with the YouTube algorithm. And subscribe if you haven't done so far. I'll see you again, hopefully soon in one of my community races and live on stream. Take care everyone and goodbye.